Go live. There we are. Oh,
Good morning.
good morning. Hello, friends and family, and welcome back to another Coffee and Conversation with the If You Could See Me project. I am your host, Erin Mahone, and I am super excited and honored, first of all, to be back. I took a month off, took the month of July off took the month of July off from podcasting on super early on Saturday mornings, but I didn't take a month off from anything else. But most importantly, I'm so thrilled and honored to be joined this morning by my amazing guest, Amanda Lynch. Amanda, thank you so much. I know that this was you are the prolific author and expert in all things mindfulness and mental health and trauma awareness, and you have all kinds of stuff going on this morning, and so thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you. Excited to talk to you today.
So, we've already got folks joining us. Good morning, Sandy. Please, for any and all folks who are joining us this morning, type your questions in. Give us your love and support. We love having people interacting. It's why I do this on Facebook to start out. Hi, Heidi. To get to communicate with people and connect with people. So, Amanda, I'm going to jump right in. You are amazing in so many ways, and you are building this magnificent empire, the sort of foundation of which is these beautiful children's books that you're creating, and there's so much more that's sort of fundamentally attached to that. You talk about mental health and mindfulness and trauma awareness in such an accessible and beautiful way. And I just want to kind of jump into that and start off asking you, where did this come from, and how did you become inspired to start doing this work through this very specific lens of helping children and helping kids to understand their emotions and develop emotional awareness, and for us all to become more trauma informed?
Sure. So I think my work really started in maybe almost 20 years or so ago. I was a classroom teacher for a really long time in Richmond Public Schools. And just noticed the way that community violence, toxic stress was showing up in my classroom, and not just in my students' behaviors or responses to things, but just the way that it was also wearing on me. And so I started doing yoga as a personal practice, just at Gold's Gym, nothing too serious. And then kind of fell away from that for a little while. Jumped back into yoga at Humble Haven Yoga. Ended up getting my registered yoga teacher credentials, and really fell in love with restorative yoga. So that's more of like the professional side of how I kind of came into really being involved in like social emotional awareness and the way that adverse childhood experiences shows up in young people. And then on the flip, my husband really struggles with his mental health, and I'm very open with talking about this. But just noticing patterns that he had in his childhood and not wanting to replicate those things for my own kids. And so really wanting my children to be empowered in their space, to be able to say, I'm sad or I'm frustrated or I'm having big feelings, but then having them be able to pull from their own internal toolkits to sort of process that through. And so with merging that lived experience and professional experience, I also had an enormous amount of loss as an adult. My children's books were born, and so that was kind of in a short minute of how everything kind of got started and was evolved from there.
So, I think we both share that sort of the lived experience piece, the bringing your own life and your own, resilience and challenges and life lessons that you've learned to the platform that you're building. That's obviously how the If You Could See Me project was born as well. And then, combining that professional piece. I'm curious about how things have evolved. I think I saw the other day, because I'm an Amanda groupie, and so I follow your posts and I read your stuff, and I read your Mighty posts, and I think you said the other day that you've been writing for the Mighty for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And so how has that evolved over 5 years? Where did you start in this process, and how did people, both, outside of your circle and also inside your circle, respond when you first started talking about, this stuff, and then, now that you're sort of developed as an expert in the field?
Sure. So I started writing initially for the Mighty as an outlet for myself in trying to navigate my husband's mental health. And really also wanting to remove the stigma of mental health disorders in the Black community. Because on Facebook, we look like really happy all the time. So when you look at people's Facebook pages, you can kind of start to envy them or compare your own lives to them. And a lot of what you see on social media isn't real at all. So I really just wanted to kind of expose that, because I have 4 kids. Things are crazy at my house more often than they're not. And just because you see people smiling in a picture doesn't mean that things are balanced or perfect, or we all have our own struggles. And so I think that was initially why I started writing for the Mighty. I grew up. I had a really fantastic childhood in like a multi-generational family. It was great. And so I wasn't really prepared for a lot of the things that I saw when I became a classroom teacher. And it almost was like trial by fire, trying to figure out like how do you not pour too much of yourself into your students to the point where you're like paralyzed, or you're unable to function and cope and be there for your own family. I have no idea how people found me on the Mighty. I have sort of focused now on like Black pop culture and mental health in the Black community there. Racism as trauma is always something I've been very passionate about, and have always just felt really comfortable talking about race and class and how poverty shows up in your body, toxic stress and all of those things. So but I really enjoy it. We have a nice community of super contributors where we meet monthly and have all kind of workshops together, and so I think that would probably be like the initial way that I kind of came into writing from that lens too.
And how did people respond in your world, in your immediate orbit, when you first started telling your story or talking about your experiences, or commenting on the world?
It's mixed. I would be honest, it was mixed reaction. Some family members felt like, oh, you shouldn't publicly talk about all of the things that go on. But if my husband had cancer, I would certainly be talking about it. People would certainly be at my door with meals and offering to help and picking my children up. And I feel like mental health is just another illness. And that as long as we keep these things covered and secret, we can't really be there and offer help and hope for other people. It was certainly mixed emotions, and I think some of that is generational too.
Of course.
I think I mentioned I have 4 kids, so my kids are 22, 15, 7, and 4. And certainly the way my older 2 kids talk about mental health is much different than the way we may have. No one would have been talking about being depressed when I was in high school. And then I talk to my younger girls about having a healthy brain and what that looks like and what it looks like to need help and how to access help. And these are just normal conversations in our house. And I think that they should be, that should just be common across the board.
Totally. And I think that, so often, it's really scary to sort of take that step, that first step to being the one that talks about the stuff that nobody's ever talked about before, right? And, the idea that, if I do that, like, what will the repercussions be, or what might the outcome be? And I found that certainly there were people who didn't love that I was talking about our family history of mental health, serious mental health issues, and what that looked like and what that experience was. And after I started doing it and people started hearing the way that I was talking about things, it was like it gave other people permission to do something that they never thought they could do. And then it just sort of opened up the floodgates in terms of the way that we talk about these things, the way that we think about the people in our lives who were experiencing these things, the way that we think about ourselves and our own, our own experience, our own lived experience with mental health stuff. And it created this so much more open, warm, loving, sort of almost enthusiastic, over time, not immediately, but enthusiastic desire to kind of, oh my gosh, I can tell this story. I can talk about these things. I can talk about the experience that I had. And it just, I want to highlight that, because I think that, if somebody is at the entry point of this for themselves or for their own families, it feels really scary. Mm-hmm. And, in so many cases, what I hear, what I have experienced, it sounds like what you've heard as well. Certainly there are people who don't love it, and there are so many more people who feel liberated by, your courage.
Absolutely. And I think even like as a mom, recognizing that being a mother is really hard. It's not like the easiest job to try to balance all of the things that even come along with that. And I think sometimes, my dog is like going crazy. I think that sometimes we can get bogged down by what we think other people expect for us, or how they expect us to show up. And I have really great kids, but nobody in my house is perfect.
Exactly.
And so, for all of the successes that we have just as many failures. Mm-hmm. And I think people are very open to talking about, my 7-year-old was cast in the lead role in a play, but like she also was really struggling with bedtime. Like just being able to even open up those conversations to allow people to understand that you're not alone, and you have a community and a village has been really powerful for me. And I get a lot of messages from moms who are struggling with their own anxiety or mental health, or feeling like they have to be perfect, or they're overworked because right now their kids are doing virtual school, and they're also working, and their husbands are struggling with their businesses, but maybe things aren't going well. Just the whole gamut. And so I'm just thankful to even be in a position to have these kinds of conversations, and just to continue to normalize what I feel like a normal,
completely
everyday life experience.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I love that because, there is this, and it's really tough as a therapist who works with teenagers. Social media is like a scourge on our children, right? And so if our kids are getting this message that they're not, they're not worthy of love, acceptance, success, all of that, if things don't appear perfect, that message is, they're getting that message somewhere. Now, a lot of that is also being gotten from peers on social media. And there's a lot of parents out there who feel that they're not worthy of love and acceptance and all the things if they're not perfect. And so given opportunities to like be, you know, Glennon Doyle brutal, be, you know, really messy, be, you know, all the things that we are completely, is again another sort of sense of like, oh, I can breathe. I don't actually have to project this sense of having it all together all the time. I love that you know, you can juxtapose my kid got cast in this play, my kid's really, you know, talented and successful, and we're providing her with all these opportunities, and she's still a developing human, and I'm still a human who, you know, has a hard time with bedtime sometimes, and you know, any other number of boundaries and limits. And, you know, you can have one without the other. So I'm really, like, I have loved the way that you have presented and talked about some of the issues that arose around boundaries and around trauma during the Olympics. With numerous young athletes who had, you know, Simone Biles and Campbell. Was it Campbell?
Osaka. Naomi Osaka.
Okay.
Maybe
Sha'Carri was the one I was thinking about, because, you know, the situation with the smoking and the, you know, being excluded from the games and all of that, and the way that you talked about, you know, there were a lot of people who were saying these are the rules and you know the rules, and you took the conversation a step further and you said, you know, this is a conversation about trauma. This is a conversation about what we think is worthy of, you know, acknowledgement, and, you know, how we cope, and, you know, how are our systems responding to the complex emotions associated with being a human, and the human experience. And so, you know, I would love to hear more about, you know, what brought all of this up for you, and, you know, why you felt like you needed to talk about it.
So gymnastics and track and field are like life in my house in terms of sports. My husband was a track star, like, just insane. Had a full scholarship to BMI for track and field, amazing athlete. But just having had so much trauma, it really just changed the whole trajectory of his career. And watching how even with just him, sports can sometimes keep you alive, right? And so can make you feel like you're on the top of the world on one end, and then you make a misstep or a mistake and you're disposable. And so watching Sha'Carri Richardson, I was a young girl. I still always have a different hair color. Right now I have lime green nails. Like I have at 41, just show up however I am, and don't feel like I have to match myself or code switch, but like all of that come with life experience. I work in a very healthy nonprofit that focuses on mental health, and so we're encouraged to just be ourselves, right? And so it was really refreshing for me to see a young black girl just show up as herself. And in the next week, see all of that sort of slip away from her. And I think that with that particular incident, had no order, tell her that her mother had passed away, not knowing the situation with her and her mom, not knowing how this may impact her. I just felt like it was irresponsible. And then the same with Simone Biles. I mean, there's no question that she's the greatest gymnast that we will probably ever see in our lifetime. And my girls, gymnastics, my younger girls. So we're like always just like
have
have
our eyes
our
on, I
eyes
guess,
on, I guess,
those two
those two
sports.
sports.
And I think for
And I
black
think for
women in
black women in
particular, sometimes
particular,
we're
sometimes we're
expected as
expected as
superhuman
superhuman
to just
to
be able
just
to
be able
push
to push
through, to
through, to
carry
carry
everyone's
everyone's.
burden and the weight of the world, and just be expected to go. And I am encouraged by this young generation in saying that my mental health is just as important as my physical health, and recognizing when they need to set a boundary or step back and just doing that, regardless of what the risk might look like, regardless of what it might impact an endorsement, just really showing up as their whole selves, and saying that it's okay and enough is enough. I'm really inspired by that, with looking again at both Naomi Osaki, Simone Biles, and Shakar Richardson, and talking very openly about their struggles with depression and anxiety and the way that the media attacks them. So, yeah, I think just having three girls who are all athletes. I mean, Ava's a dancer, but I still would consider that athletics for sure. And recognizing that your physical health is not more important than your mental health, is just super important to me.
Thank you for that. Uh, I think that we don't hear that message ever. It's not like we say, "Oh, we don't hear that message enough." We don't hear that message ever. And when it comes to consuming media, consuming, sports is such a huge, and the arts. The only time that the arts are valued in our culture is when it has been, fully commodified, right? Like, to be a creative person is a cute hobby unless you're making a ton of money at it, right?
Absolutely.
And so often the requirement or the ability to make a ton of money at something requires you to fully sacrifice your own well-being and your own mental health and your own needs to the monster or the machine that is capitalism. A whole nother conversation that we could have another time. But as a parent of like a dancer and performers and all of those things, and athletes, they are the message that you are sending, that foundation that you are building, means that we get to have a future generation of people who say, wait a minute, like, these skills are valuable whether or not they're on a large stage or a small stage. And additionally, the way that we, as consumers of this media, believe that somehow these athletes or performers or other public figures owe us something,
Absolutely.
is so toxic. And like, we do not have a right to ask someone to put their lives in danger because we enjoy watching them fly through the air or run really fast.
You don't owe us anything.
No.
And I say to my girls in particular, if you're not happy doing this thing,
If
if
this
this
thing
thing doesn't refill you or contribute to you being balanced,
we're not doing it. I mean, we're simply not doing it. And I think, particularly with Ava, with going viral last year and doing all these interviews and doing all these workshops, which we're all still doing, if you are not enjoying this, we're not going. Like, we're just not going to do it. I'm not willing to sacrifice you so that you can be consumed for other people. Like, that's not why God put you here, or the spirit, or the universe, or whatever you want to label it. Like, that's not your purpose, is not to entertain people. So, especially when it's at your own expense. So, yeah, I know my son says all the time, like, I'm a much different parent than I was for the younger girls than I was for him and Ava, because really, I mean, Justin's an amazing dancer. He was in Joffrey Ballet Trainee before COVID hit, and everything was dance and being the best. And And yeah, as I've become more mindful in my parenting, and I think more confident in my parenting and like just who I am as a person, like those things just don't, I mean, the awards are nice and the checks are nice, but like if you're not enjoying it, if you don't feel like you're showing up for yourself as your best self, for me, it's just not worth it.
And it's so difficult. It's almost impossible for a young person to make that decision for themselves. I mean, it's impossible for older people to make those decisions for themselves when the accolades are coming in and the money is coming in and the opportunities are coming in. It's very difficult to say no or to set those boundaries if the message has been different than the one that you're sending right now, right? Absolutely. If the message is that, we need you to do this. You are the light for all of us. You are, what are you, it's not just about you. And I think very often exceptional, talented young people do get that message that, you're not just doing this for yourself and for your own edification or your own personal development. Is, somehow there's a sense of needing to validate the existence of like an entire family.
And I tell people like that's a trauma response, like not being able to set boundaries, feeling like you have to sacrifice
yourself, feeling like you can't say no. Like that's called fawning. That's a trauma response. The answer is just no, and that's a complete sentence. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why Simone Biles said, I can't do this. You don't owe it to America to sacrifice your mental health. And I just really appreciated the outpouring of support and love that I saw. And even when people weren't being so kind, there were many more people pushing back against that narrative and saying, no, we're not doing that anymore. And pulling up examples. I think it was Mary Lou Retton maybe came out in support of her, and just all of these different athletes that said, no, enough is enough. This is toxic. Enough is enough. And this is the example that we want for sustainable athleticism, and not the opposite, that you're out here playing basketball with pneumonia like Michael Jordan did in 1997, or you have moral conflict with something that's happening in the world and you're expected to just shut up and dribble as LeBron James was told to do. The athletes are whole people. They're not just, here to entertain us.
It's such a valuable, valid point, and so much has changed. And I feel like there's so much that our young people are helping us to learn, and helping us to, we have this disgusting sort of anti-millennial sentiment that happens all the time, and Gen Z is getting it, is going to get it even worse, I'm sure. But to see I am always sort of excited by the way that younger millennials are learning to set boundaries and are demanding certain, elements of quality of life that everyone, wants to say, oh, they're so entitled. No, they don't want to be exploited for their labor. They want to earn a decent living and have a quality of life. And why is that a bad thing?
Imagine paying people a living wage.
Amazing. What a novel concept.
Imagine not expecting people to volunteer hours and hours of their time beyond their contracted day.
Right.
It's insane. And I just think about all the things that I learned from listening to Ava in particular talk about with her friends, and I'm like, I've never thought about that maybe salary, employment exploitation. Ava, I've never thought about it that way. Even like the things that we expect teachers to do, working hours and hours of unpaid time in summers after school, and not really earning a living wage
because the reward is your students. And But no, the reward is not your students. The reward is being able to go to the grocery store and get whatever it is that you want for the week.
One day when I retire, actually being able to like live off of my retirement. Yeah.
And
Being able to send my own children to college, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, the idea.
Massive student loan debt, even.
Right.
In order to have a job that barely pays you enough to pay your bills.
Right. And, you know, I am a therapist working in community mental health. And so it's a very similar type of mentality that somehow, you know, you go through the process and you work and you get a master's degree and you do all the things that you're supposed to do and you pay for your own continuing education and your own supervision and your own, you know, and then you're looked at like, you know, well, isn't the fulfillment of helping people enough? I'm like, it's big. I'm here. I'm showing up every day. It's good. But, you know, also being able to live my life when I'm not working 12-hour days would be nice.
To be able to put gas in my car.
It would be good. You know, if my kid needs a therapist because his parent is a therapist, you know, which is all, you know, probably the case. I'd like to be able to afford to get him a therapist, right? So, you know, it's an interesting thing that we ask our helpers and our leaders to do, which is to sacrifice our own needs. And I'm heartened by the fact that young people are saying no more. That's not acceptable. You don't get to have all of me.
And they're saying it
without apology.
Yes. Right.
Like it's not happening.
Right.
That's just the end of it.
Right. We should all be able to earn a living wage and, you know, and not give all of our blood to our employer. And I love that. I love it. And I'm trying to learn it. It's hard.
Yeah, me too.
It's hard to relearn. And I think so that's where we've got a few minutes left because you have other engagements because you're in very high demand. And so, but I think that's where I want to end. And that is that a few minutes ago you said you're a very different parent now with your younger two than you were with your older two. And this all kind of leads into the idea of like what I want to leave people with, which is it's never too late to become whatever that is. You know, if it's a different version of yourself as a parent or as an employee, or, you know, if you are in your mid-30s and you've been doing things, you know, for a really long time, and then, you know, you're deciding, oh, I want to do things completely different. Or if you're in your mid-40s or in your mid-50s, or you don't have to dig in and say, well, this is the way I've always done it, so I guess this is where I am. So let's talk about that.
I always just try to be in the mindset of being teachable and learning new things. And so I'm an avid reader
of articles. I'm always reading articles. I love mindfulness work, not just to pour into other people, but really like for myself. I can feel like when I'm not at my best self, right? Or when I'm on the verge of having a moment of frustration. Bedtime for sure is the time where I'm least mindful, right? And so I'm well aware of that. And so I talk to Hazy and Rosie, my younger girls, about mommy is feeling really frustrated right now, and I can feel it in my chest or my head. And it's okay that I'm feeling frustrated. I need to communicate that to you all. I talk about communication in a mindful way with them. So there are times where I get that right, and then there are times when I don't, where I'm screaming and yelling, and it doesn't make me feel good to show up like that. And so then I have to go back and say, like, I'm sorry, I'm just frustrated. And, you know, and we have those conversations every day, every moment is an opportunity to get things right. And so I never go into the next day worried about what happened yesterday. If I have shown up in an unhealthy way for them at bedtime the night before, right, and now I'm feeling guilty, like, gosh, I probably shouldn't have yelled. I'm certainly going to apologize in the morning, and we're going to talk about whatever has happened. And so I think just being in the mindset of being teachable The more you know, I think the better prepared you are for all of the different expectations that people have of you. That was actually our conversation this morning, as I was dropping them off at my mom's house, was like, what are their expectations of me? What are mine of them? Because we're preparing to go back to school, right? And so, yeah, I think that with my son, and even with Ava a little bit, we were like on a quest to be the best. And so, there are no earthworms here, only eagles, and failure isn't an option. Like all these things I was hearing as a classroom teacher that I was bringing home. And it's just not healthy. Like there's a lot to be learned by failing and getting up and trying again and not getting it right the first time. And health, talking about our health, whether it's physical or mental, and making an allowance for any feeling that you have to be okay, but it just not being okay to be stuck there. And yeah, I have had my kids check in during the pandemic with a therapist just to make sure they're okay, because I want to be proactive about that too. Just like I would take you to have your annual physical at the pediatrician, I just want to have someone check on you that's not me and make sure you're not carrying around all of the stress that has happened over the last 18 months. Because in particularly for this time, we don't know how this is impacting us, and may never really know how this stress has impacted our hormones. And many of us, waving my hand here, have not been so great about the healthy eating or exercise or those things we may have been doing before. And so, yeah, I think that that would just be like some things I would offer and encourage others, is to just recognize that every day is a new day, to always be teachable and be willing to learn new things. And if you recognize there are some things that have shown up for you or you have displayed that you're not super proud of, that's okay too. That's all part of your experience, and just get up and keep moving.
I love the ending on and beginning every day on, and living in that authentic space of just always be teachable. Always be open to learning that there might have been something you didn't know. Because, I think every human is aware that there are things that we don't know. And applying that to the way that we show up to the world, I think can enrich us so deeply, and can change our relationships with our children and our spouses and our parents and our friends and and everyone. That I always love to show up in relationship with someone who is open, right? And I try to be the person who shows up with that sense of openness as well. And it allows for such a depth of interaction, of sharing our humanity with one another, when we're able to show up with each other in that way. So Amanda, I respect you so much. I value the work that you do. I think that you are a remarkable human in literally everything you do. I mean, your kids are an example of that. Your work is an example of that, and just the way you show up to the world is such an inspiration and an example for us all. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Erin.
And I'm excited to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm so glad to have talked to you this morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for making the time in your busy schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.